Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome to Flames Reaction Channel. Now, in this video, I am going to react the great legendary Nate Dogg. And with that being said, make sure y'all hit the like, comment, and that subscribe button. And let's go ahead and check out this full moments of Nate Dogg.
Now, see, when it comes to Nate Dogg, right, he was in my favorite era of hip hop, that Death Row, that Bad Boy Wu Tang era. I like to call it the golden age of hip hop. And don't get me wrong, man, but I love all the new rappers that's doing the singing and the auto tune on hooks now. But I heard Snoop say Ty Dolla Sign was the reincarnation of Nate Dogg. Hmm, I like Ty Dolla Sign. He's dope to me. But I don't know. And see when Snoop said that, a lot of people wasn't feeling that statement, especially Nate Dogg's son, who goes by the name Inhale, who responded back to Snoop, basically telling him to cut it out because there would never be another Nate Dogg. Nate Dogg, aka the King of Hooks, the G Funk crooner, and you can't forget about his songwriting skills. Look, look, man, Nate had that laid back, smooth R&B gangster style, and in my opinion, he was the G Funk era. When people say G Funk, I think of Nate Dogg because look, usually when you think of R&B singers, you think about them singing about love and romance, but Nate Dogg, man, he was singing about pulling out his gun and laying busters down. That's that regulators, man. Charlie Wilson from the Gap Band said he was just incredible, and he brought that real R&B element to hip hop, and he had that old soul thing that helped strengthen rap songs. Nate Dogg put that puzzle together. Ice Cube said, if you want to hit, you gotta have a Nate Dogg bit. Radio host Big Boy said the West Coast rap scene was built on Nate Dogg. Ladies, man, he was a gangster. Daz from the Dog Pound, he did an interview on Vlad. He said him and Nate Dogg were the robbers of the crew. And doing my research, man, a lot of people close to him said Nate was the real deal, man. He was a gangster. Him, Trey D, C Style, Nate was the real deal, man. He was nominated for 4 Grammys. Man, let's get into Nate's story, man. Look, Nate Dogg was born August 19th, 1969, in Clarksdale, Mississippi. Now, growing up, he listened to a lot of gospel music, but you know, that's because his father was a pastor in the church and his mother was in charge of the kids choir. And him and his siblings, they formed a little gospel singing group called the Hale Family. I think Nate was like 6 years old when he first started singing. Now, as he got older, some of his music idols was Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, and Maurice White from the group Earth, Wind and Fire. By the age of 14 years old, his parents divorced, and his mother ended up moving to Long Beach, California. And that's where he met Snoop Dogg and Warren G because they was in the same class. Now, in school, Snoop was always rapping, and Nate could rap, but not as good as Snoop. But he was singing because he came from the church. And him and Snoop, they became best friends. Him, Snoop, Warren G, they used to play football. basketball together, and go to church together. By the age of 17, he dropped out of high school and joined the Marines for 3 years, but ended up being discharged because he kept coming home unauthorized because he said he was tired of it. But the truth was, Nate said he came home and caught his cousin and his girlfriend in the bed together, and he held them hostage for like 3 days or something like that. That's why he got kicked out of the Marines. And that interview, he talked about that in an interview on Double XL and the Vibe magazine. Now, after the military, he came back home and he couldn't find no job, and he ended up getting kicked out of his mom's house. So he had to hustle to get money. But he ended up catching a robbery charge after robbing a check cashing place. That's when he got back with Snoop Dogg and Warren G, who also got kicked out of their mother's houses too. And by that time, they had a rap group where Snoop was the rapper and Warren G was the DJ. And they wanted Nate to be the singer of the group. They called themselves 213, which was the area code they was from. But they really got the idea from rapper Richie Rich and his group 415, which was where they was from. And that's when they started making demo tapes at their friend house named Money B. Then they started recording at a record store called VIP with DJ Slice. And before they knew it, the mixtapes was all over LA. The crazy part is Snoop was down with the rap group Above the Law at first before he even met Dre. Because see, Warren G was Dr. Dre's little brother and he was always telling Dre about his group. But during that time, Dre just thought they needed to keep working and they weren't ready yet. Until one day, Dr. Dre had threw a party for one of his friends, and Warren G ended up playing some of the songs they did at the party. And everybody at the party was going crazy and they liked the songs. And that's when Dr. Dre told Warren to bring Snoop to the studio to help work on this album. Because, see, at that time, Dr. Dre had just left Easy E and Ruthless Records, and him and Suge Knight had got together and started their own label, which was first going to be called Future Shock Records. But then they wanted to call it Death Row, like Def Jam. He was going to spell it with the DEF, like Def Jam. But they later changed it to Death Row Records. I think I saw an interview with Jewel. She said she suggested that name to him. And during that time, they had Jewel, um, Lady of Rage, Dogg Pound, RBX, the DOC. They all chipped in, man. And they helped Dr. Dre with the Chronic album. And Nate Dogg was featured on the tracks called These Nuts and Little Ghetto Boy. That was my junk, too. Look, the crazy part is they ended up signing everybody to the label except Warren G. But I just think Dre didn't want him around all that crazy mess because that was his little brother. And Warren G blew up anyway, man. After he signed with Def Jam, he blew up anyway. But we'll get to that later. Now, after the success of Dr. Dre's album, The Chronic, which was triple platinum at the time, they began working on Snoop's album titled Doggy Style. And during that time, it was crazy because Snoop was fighting a murder case. But one of my favorite songs on the Doggy Style album was called It Ain't No Fun If the Homies Can't Have None. Man, that was my junk right there. Nate did his thing on that song. Now, that album ended up selling over 4 million copies, and Death Row Records was on fire during that time. Right after that, Warren G had got his deal with Def Jam and wanted Nate Dogg on his first single called Regulate. That's when they came with the same concept like Snoop and Dre on the song Deep Cover to go back and forth with the verses, and it worked. The song Regulate reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the US Hot Rap Songs Billboard, and was nominated for Best Rap Performance by a duo or group at the Grammys. It was also the first single off the soundtrack for Above the Rim, making Warren G and Nate Dogg stars at the time. Look, the crazy part is the Above the Rim soundtrack was on Death Row Records, and Suge Knight was mad that Warren G had signed with Def Jam and blew up. And he was trying to bully Leo Cohen and Russell Simmons. But see, here's the thing. Def Jam wanted to sign Nate Dogg also, but Suge put a stop to that quick and hurry up gave him some money. That's when Suge told Def Jam that Nate Dogg wasn't going to be in the video for Regulate, and because he was signed to Death Row Records or something like that. But Chris Lighty, R.I.P. to Chris Lighty, he stepped to Suge about that situation and they worked it out. Man, you know what? Nate Dogg should have been next up anyway after that song Regulate. He should have been ready to drop an album, man, because he was hot at the time, but Death Row didn't let him put no material out. He was singing on the St. Ives beer commercial and everything. Nate was hot at that time, man. The crazy part is Nate ended up robbing a Taco Bell just to get some money. Now, in an interview, Suge claimed Nate Dogg was caught on tape 5 times robbing a Taco Bell, and if it wasn't for him for not paying for his lawyer, there wouldn't be no Nate Dogg. I mean, he did have the song "One More Day" on the Murder Was the Case soundtrack, which was dope. But him and the Lady of Rage was next up to release albums, man. They should have dropped. Death Row should have dropped their albums, man. But instead, look, they signed MC Hammer. They had signed MC Hammer, Danny Boy. They released a Dog Pound album, Dog Food, and look, Nate did his thing on their first single called "Let's Play House." That was my junk right there. But they should have dropped Nate's album, man. He was hot at that time. Also during that time, the East Coast and the West Coast was beefing because even though the West Coast hip hop music was dominating the charts, they weren't getting no airplay on the East Coast though. Plus, Suge and Puff had issues with each other, and when Suge made that statement at the Source Awards, Nate said he thought to himself like, that was a stupid move. Why would you say that in New York on stage? And because when Suge made that statement, Nate Dogg said that's when him and DJ Quick stood up and just stood back to back and told each other, if you don't let nobody hit me in the back of my head, I won't let nobody hit you in the back of your head. But luckily, nobody got hurt that night. Also around that time, Death Row had got into it with Dre. Hi, Frank George here. And BG Knockout, who was Easy E's boys, at the Montel Jordan video shoot for the song "Something for the Honeys." That video is on YouTube where you can see Nate Dogg hitting Drayster with the golf club. Nate Dogg, Nate Dogg, man. Even though he was an R&B singer of the crew, Nate was no joke. He was a wild boy. Even Drayster and BG Knockout gave Nate his props for not backing down. And years later, they squashed their beef and did a song called "Victims of Reality." Now, after that, Suge Knight signed Tupac, and him and Nate Dogg was already cool with each other from way back because they did this song called "How Long Will They Mourn Me" for the Thug Life album. When Tupac got to Death Row, they did the song "Scandalous" and "It's All About You," which is one of my favorite songs off the All Eyes on Me album. But see, also around that time, Death Row Studios was starting to be a little bit too much. Too many fights, shootings, engineers were getting beat up, and it was making it hard to get any work done. It got so bad that Nate Dogg would put on a vest every time he went to the studio, and that's when Dr. Dre decided to leave, especially after Michelle A started sleeping with Suge Knight. But that's another story. And by this time, RBX was gone, Sam Snead was gone, and the DOC was gone. So that's when Nate thought he would finally get his chance to release his album. But on September 7th, 1996, Tupac was shot in Las Vegas, and he died 6 days later on Friday the 13th. Now, according to the rapper Badass, R.I.P. the Badass, he said Nate Dogg was the one that called him and Daz Dillinger and told them that Tupac had been shot because he was several cars behind Tupac when the shooting took place. He thought that Tupac and Suge Knight were dead. See, a lot of people don't know, man. Nate was there when Tupac got hit that night. I think he might have been the only Dog Pound member there that night. Now, after Tupac died, things was just starting to fall apart at Death Row Records. Suge was about to go to jail for violating his probation, and the studios were being raided by the FBI. And I think Nate had got caught up too. He got convicted of a drug offense that year or something like that. But the good thing was Nate had finally dropped his single titled "Never Leave Me Alone," which hit number 33 on the Billboard Hot 100. And I love that song too, man. That was my junk too. Now on that song, Nate was talking about all his troubles he'd been through, but Suge Knight still didn't drop his album. And and by that time, I think Nate had enough and decided to leave the label. And he ended up signing
That's crazy. Like, why would you have Nate Dogg wait all this time just to have just to having his album being dropped? Like, do you know how long it take for Nate Dogg just to have every single song that needs to be finished? Like, that's crazy. For you to wait that long just to have your album put out. That wow.
with Breakaway Records with his own label called Dog Foundation. They say when Suge got locked, they say when Suge had got locked, Nate went and got all his music and masters out of the vault. Now with a new deal, things was going good. Him and Daz had a song on a gang-related soundtrack called "These Days," and on July 21st, 1998, he finally released his debut album titled G Funk Classics,
I like that
Volume
album.
1 and 2, with the single
Yo, that album right there with the double CDs. Oh my god, that is one of the best albums I ever heard from Nate Dogg because some of the songs I like the hardest man in town, nobody does it better, these days, and me and my homies. Those are like the top songs I have ever listened to because most of those songs are like really, really the best, you know.
titled Nobody Does It Better, featuring Warren G, which hit number 18 on the Hot 100.
But the Jeep Funk
But
Classic with
overall,
double
the
CDs,
album only sold like
classic,
150,000
great
copies at the time,
album and classic.
and Nate wasn't happy about that. Nate Dogg said in an interview he knew the album wasn't going to do well after the label gave him a $500,000 check that bounced, which was for his marketing and promotion. Plus, I think a lot of fans felt like the
Excuse
sound
me.
was outdated because it was a lot of old material he did years ago when Suge should have dropped the album when he was hot. After that, the good thing was everybody wanted him to do hooks for their songs. I mean, everybody wanted him on their stuff. He was on Snoop's Bitch Please, E40, Nana, Shay Shice, Where I Wanna Be, which hit number one on the rap charts. He did the Most Def and the Pharoah Monch, Oh No, that hit number one on the rap charts. Snoop's
And let's not forget, Nate Dogg was also featured on Eminem's soundtrack called what was the song Eminem did? Oh yes, Shake That. Nate Dogg also featured with Eminem's music called Shake That. So yeah.
Lay Low, Fabulous, I Can't Deny It, Ludacris, Area Codes, Dr. Dre's Next Episode, and many more. Oh, and you can't forget one of my favorite
Excuse
songs,
me.
Explosive. On the Chronic 2001, man, Nate killed that song, man. And now the money was rolling in. They say Nate was charging about $150,000 for a hook, and he would get like 20 requests a month for features. Wow. But also during that time,
All right, y'all. That's it for this video, and I'm out. Peace out, y'all.